So this is relatively new for me. I am shooting this on my MacBook, so I apologize for the poor quality, but I live in a halfway house. I'll get into what that means in a little, but so just bear with me with this. But I had posted on Instagram a couple of weeks ago asking if people would be interested in seeing a Q&A with kind of like what being an alcoholic has looked like for me, what going to treatment has looked like for me, what recovery has ended up looking like for me, and people seemed kind of interested. So I figured I would share my experiences with whoever wants to see them, and like maybe you guys can learn something, maybe you guys know somebody who's struggling with mental health or addiction and this might help them, so who knows. But with that, let's just jump right into it. So the first question that I get pretty often is, how long do you have to be sober? Or some version of that question. The answer is forever. For me and for a lot of addicts and alcoholics, if not all, we can't drink like normal people. For people who, you know, can go out and have a glass of wine with dinner, or could go out and have 2 drinks with friends at bars, like I can't do that. Like maybe that night I can, but my disease is chronic and progressive, so it's constant and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. So maybe I can have it under control for, who knows, a couple days, a couple weeks, a couple months, a couple hours. Like it really depends. But for me, yeah, I can't drink like a normal person. I can't put any sort of chemical in my body and remain in control. I have it in allergy, you could say. It's a really good way I explain it. And in a lot of alcoholic literature, that is how it is explained. You know, we have a physical allergy. So forever is the answer to that question. I have been attempting to be sober for a little over a year now. Currently, I have around 4 months sober, because relapse is part of my story, again, which I will get into. But yeah, I love that question because it's like, yeah, forever. Like, I am an alcoholic. It is a very defining characteristic of me as a person. So yeah, so forever. I'm gonna be sober forever. The next question that I get, especially here, is when people ask me where I live and I say I live in a halfway house, and people are like, oh, what's that? And totally fair, because I thought halfway houses were only for people who got out of jail and didn't have anywhere to go. But especially in South Florida, which is where I am, halfway houses kind of take over a lot of neighborhoods. But basically what a halfway house is when you get out of treatment, rehab, whatever, however you want to phrase it, when you get out of treatment, and then it's not recommended that you go like back into the real world yet. It is recommended that you stay in a little bit of a sober bubble, and halfway is a way to do that. I was in treatment. I was inpatient in treatment, which means no cell phone, no money, no job. Basically just went to a center with 20 other people every day from like 7 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon, and just like really intense therapy, just like very, very intense therapy, group therapy, art therapy, one-on-one sessions, all that good stuff. And the point of treatment, other than to retrain our brains, and by our I mean alcoholics and addicts, to retrain our brains to think in a healthy way. But it's also to separate us from our addiction, whatever our addiction may be. So it's to put us in this very safe space where we don't have to we don't have to deal with the social pressures of drinking, of using. It's we're taking ourselves out of the environment that made us sick. We're taking ourselves away from the people that made us sick, or kept us sick, you know? So after treatment, I was in treatment for, I believe, around 45 days. And then I was in an outpatient program, where at that point you get your cell phone back, you get to get a job, and I lived on our property for another 2 months after I got out of treatment. So I've been at my halfway house since, I believe, the beginning of February of 2018. When I'm filming this, it's the end of October. So I've been here for a good while. And I am very, very grateful for this halfway house. It has been a really life-changing experience. I have met some of my best friends here. I have learned a lot, and it has really helped me in my journey. But kind of what halfway house gives you, it's like a step down from living in treatment residences. So my curfew is a little bit later. Yes, I have a curfew. Hi, I'm Emily, 26, and I have a curfew. My curfew is a little bit later. Less drug tests. However, we still get random drug tests and breathalyzers, at least once a week, sometimes more. We have a weekly house meeting. They offer therapy here. We go to AA or NA meetings every day is when it's recommended. You go every day. So it just, you have people who work here, who can talk to you, who help you. So it provides a little bit of structure. It provides a safe place to kind of get your feet wet and going back out into the regular world. And that's what a halfway house is. Another question that I get with some regularity is, what happened? Which is just the simplest way I can phrase it. But, you know, when I left New York, and for those of you who don't know, I had been living in Manhattan for the last 7.5, almost 8 years. And I left, and I grew up in upstate New York. So I had only lived in New York my entire life. But I left, like, the question I get is, like, why did you have to leave? Because when I did leave, and people found out eventually, like, that I had moved to Florida and went to rehab, people were shocked. They were like, oh my God, I didn't know you had a problem. And I'm like, oh yeah, no, it was brutal. I am a crippling alcoholic. And I find that very interesting because in my head and my heart, I knew how sick I was, but apparently to everybody around me, people didn't really know. But how did I make the decision to do this? I lost everything. I did. You know, if you guys know me, you know that I got married in September of 2016, and I am no longer married. It was 1 year and 3 days after my 1-year wedding anniversary, where my husband was like, you gotta go. I can't do this with you anymore. So that was one thing. Just one thing that I lost. And yes, did him and I have our problems that I'm not going to get into because I'm not going to put it on the internet. But one of the big factors was the fact that I was very sick. And I had been very sick for a very long time. So I lost that. I had lost a couple of jobs at this point. I had been unemployed for a long time. And then I had a couple of jobs that I lost. I was drunk at work. I was starting fights with people I work with because I was drunk. So I couldn't hold a job. I had no money because I wasn't working, and then I couldn't keep jobs. I was fighting with anybody who cared about me. My family, my closest friends. I was emotionally and spiritually bankrupt. I hated myself. I hated the life that I had built for me. And on paper, my life looked really good. You know, I had the nice apartment on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, and I had the husband, and I had the champagne and the crystal glasses and going to the opera and like eating steak, and like on paper my life looked really great, but I was miserable. I was so unhappy, and I was so dead inside, and I kept trying to find these other things that were going to like fill this like gaping hole that I had in myself, and that doesn't work. You have to learn how to love yourself. You have to learn how to love yourself. That's like the bottom line. So for me, when I decided to move to Florida, I had hit a very tangible bottom in terms of losing a lot of stuff. And I thought at this time, which was over a year ago, that I could like go to treatment for 30 days and then I could come back and I could have my life back. Obviously, that's not what happened, but that was my intention when I moved down to Florida. So it's very funny to think about. Yeah, so I had hit a very tangible bottom. And I thought I could fix it. I thought I could get it back. I thought I wanted it back. But that was kind of my thinking for why I decided to go to rehab in South Florida. So yeah. Another question that I have gotten is, what is being sober and what is being in recovery? And I can only speak to my program and my experience and how I work this. And for me, being sober and being in recovery is obviously not picking up a drink and not using any drugs. So that means I do not smoke weed, no kava, no kratom, no CBD. I really try to limit my intake of like any sort of energy drinks. I don't use pre-workout, even though I don't work out. You know, I don't drink. I don't drink anything. No alcohol whatsoever. I mean, I drink like water and coffee and a lot of Diet Coke, but alcohol, no alcohol, obviously. No drugs, just nothing. Like I'm a teetotaler at this point. And that's what being sober is for me, is you don't use anything. It's not just like, you know, oh, like you're an alcoholic so you can still smoke weed. Like, no. It's also about living a life of integrity, being honest, being willing, being open, you know, being of service, trying to help other people, you know, just putting yourself in somebody else's situation, trying to have an objective standpoint on, you know, how somebody is feeling or why they're reacting the way that they're reacting. You know, I have God in my life, and I know that makes a lot of people very uncomfortable. It made me very uncomfortable, but it is something that I have now, and I'm really happy about that because it makes the load a little less heavy. Being sober for me is just trying to do the next right thing and be kind and be loving and be compassionate and empathetic and honest. And that's kind of it, you know, because being sober is much more than not using drugs and alcohol. It's a lot more than that. It's about learning how to love yourself. It's about learning how to love those around you. It's about helping people. It's about, you know, showing up to your life and being a person of your word. And, you know, if you say you're going to do something, you do it. And if you say you don't want to do something, you don't. It's about setting boundaries for yourself. It's about setting boundaries with others. You know, it's a completely different manner of living in which I was living previously. You know, I learned a lot in the last year, and I learned something new every day. And I'm so fortunate that I have this incredible tribe of sober women who have done a lot of this stuff for much longer than I have. And I learn a lot from them every day. So yeah, so when people are like, what does it mean to be sober? What does it mean to be in recovery? Like, that's what it means to me. The last question that I'm going to talk about today, and if you guys like this and you want more, like, feel free to DM me with questions. I'll put all my social media in the video, I guess. I don't know how to do this. I'm not a vlogger. I'm just a person. But if you guys like this and if you have other questions that I didn't answer, like, feel free to, you know, ask. But the other question I have is, what happens if you do drink or use a drug? I have, and I'm grateful for this, but I have relapsed twice in the last year. The first time I relapsed, I had probably around the same amount of time that I have now, and the second time I relapsed probably with the same amount of time that I have now. So there's clearly some sort of mental block for me, but I'm past it at this point. Just gotta keep going. But what happens if you relapse? Fortunately for me, my relapses have only been a day or a night. I haven't, like, gone out and, like, ruined my whole life. I haven't, you know, had to go back to treatment. You know, I've only been to treatment once. That was my first time. That was the only time I've been to treatment. When I did relapse both times, I drank. I did not do any other drugs. But I drank, and I drank a lot. And, what's crazy about relapsing is you pick up where you left off. So, like, where I stopped drinking in October of 2017 is where I picked up my drinking in June of 2018. And worse. But you have kind of two options when you relapse. You can come back to your program, to the people who love and care about you, and be like, I fucked up. I need help. I want to get better. Or you can go out there and, like, see if it works this time. Those are your options. For me, I want this. I want to be sober, and I want to have the life that I have when I'm sober more than anything else in the world. And that's not an exaggeration. That's just the truth. I protect my sobriety over everything. I'm very selfish when it comes to my mental health, my mental well-being, my sobriety. I'm very selfish about it. If you are testing that, like, I have no room for you. So for me, when I have relapsed, I've come back, I've asked for help, and especially this last time, I had so many, so many really incredible people in my life that built me back up and helped me get back on the horse and I can't thank those people enough. I really can't. You know, the key to this is to understand that there's a power greater than yourself, and to surround yourself with people who are working this program to the best of their ability. And because of those two things, you know, I haven't had a drink or a drug since June 30th of 2018. And that's kind of all it is. Like, relapse doesn't define you. It doesn't mean that you can't come back. It doesn't mean that you've like ruined your sobriety. I mean, it means you have to start your day count over, but days are just days. You know, like time doesn't really mean much. It's what you do with your time. At least that's my experience. You know, so this last time has been really incredible. What have I gained since last October? A lot of really wonderful friends. I've gained love of myself. I've gained, I got a car, which is crazy because I never thought I would own a car and be driving to work every day. I'm moving out of Halfway in December, with my roommate in Halfway. We're getting an apartment together in South Florida, and that's crazy, and we are so excited. And it's like you just have this like really great appreciation for everything that you used to have, but now you've worked for it and you've earned it. And that is like a really incredible feeling. Yeah, I know this was probably all over the place, and I'm sorry for that, but I hope you learned some stuff about my journey. Like I said, if you have more questions, hit me up, let me know. But to anybody who watches this, thanks. I hope that some of the stuff that I've gone through could help you, or if somebody you know is struggling, you know, feel free to let them see this or give them my contact info. I'm always here. Or even if you're struggling with anything, you know, if you just need someone to talk to, like, I don't care if I know you at all, like, but, you know, just message me. But, yeah, so thanks for watching this, and until next time. All right, goodbye.
Just use my last